Modal Verbs quiz. So let's get our pen and paper out and list from 1 to 20. Unless you haven't seen the lesson about modal verbs, the link for that is in the description box below. But if you have seen it and you're good at modal verbs, let's go on with the quiz. Question 1. Using Wickham-Soms, which is an acronym, write down all 9 of the modal verbs. Now you'll have to pause the video here. I don't expect you to write down all 9 modal verbs in the space of 30 seconds. So pause the video, write them down. And on to question number 2. What is true about modal verbs? A. They don't have an infinitive. B. They can't be used as auxiliary verbs. C. Prefixes can be added. D. Gerunds can't follow them. There is only one thing there that is true about modal verbs. 3 of these statements there are false. Question 3. Which sentence is correctly written? A. I will running later. B. I will be run later. C. Will you run later? D. I will to run later. So which one is it? A, B, C or D? For question 3. On to question number 4. Which type of words can directly follow modals in questions? A. Gerunds. B. Progressive verbs. C. The word had. D. Other modal verbs. Question 5. Which modal verb can have a suffix added to turn it into an adverb? A. Would. B. Could. C. Should. D. Might. Question 6. Where does the modal verb appear in a verbal phrase? A. As the second verb. B. As the second last verb. C. As the last verb. Or is it D. As the first verb? Question 7. Which modal verb replaces can in the past? A. Could. B. Should. C. Would. D. May. On to question number 8. Which word do we not use when modals appear in the present perfect tense? A. Have. B. Has. C. The past participle. Or is it D. The noun or pronoun? Question 9. Would not, should not, could not. How should these 3 collocations be pronounced as contractions? A. Wouldn't, shouldn't, couldn't. B. Wouldn't, shouldn't, couldn't. C. Wouldn't, shouldn't, couldn't. Or is it D. Would t, should t, could t? Question 10. I would have. How would you pronounce that if you contracted would and have? A. Would've. B. Would off. C. Would if. D. Would ivy. Question 11. Which definition best describes the word can? A. A possibility. B. A polite request. C. A necessity. D. Being able to. So we're more than halfway through. You're doing a great job. Question 12. Which modal verb would you use to recommend something? A. Would. B. Will. C. Should. D. Shall. That was question number 12. Question 13. Which sentence shows an adverb negating a modal verb? A. She could have seen it. B. She may not have seen it. C. She must see it. D. She should definitely see it. Question 14. Which sentence is written in the future perfect tense? A. Could running help? B. I should have realized that. C. I could have been doing something better. D. By the time you get there, the park will have closed. On to question 15. Which sentence is written in the present perfect tense? A. May I help you? B. I may ask her for some help. C. We might have been there. D. You might want to assist. Question 16. I must go there. Which word is the main verb in that sentence? A. I. B. Must. C. Go. Or is it D. There? Question 16. It could have been being written then. How many verbs make up the verbal phrase in that sentence? Is it A. 3, B. 4, C. 5, or D. 6? Question 17. Which sentence shows a modal verb being used as the main verb? A. I thought you would have won. B. I honestly would. C. I would write that differently. D. I didn't know he could swim. Question 18. Which modal verb would you use for shall in the past, okay, as a past tense? A. Would. B. Should. C. Could. Or D. Must. Question 19. Which modal verb would you use when offering your assistance? A. May. B. Should. C. Will. Or is it D. Can? Question 20. I must have been working when you called. Name the tense. A. Present perfect. B. Present perfect continuous. C. Future perfect. D. Future perfect progressive. Yes, and that was the final question. The answers are about to come up. Question 1. Using Wickham-Soames, write down all 9 of the modal verbs. Will, can, could, might, must, should, would, may, shall. Okay? You just take away the vowels and you've got the first initial to the modal verbs. Question 2. What is true about modal verbs? A. They don't have an infinitive. All the other statements you saw for question 2 were false. Question 3. Which sentence is correctly written? Okay, that was C. Will you run later? The rest were wrong. Question 4. Which type of words can directly follow modals in questions? A. Gerunds. Okay, so you should have had A there. And for question 5, which modal verb can have a suffix added to turn it into an adverb? That was D. Might. So that would change into mightily. Question 6. Where does the modal verb appear in a verbal phrase? D. As the first verb. Question 7. Which modal verb replaces can in the past? Well, that was A. Could. Question 8. Which word do we not use when modals appear in the present perfect tense? Well, that was B. Has. Okay. Question 9. Would not, should not, could not. How should these 3 collocations be pronounced as contractions? C. Wouldn't, shouldn't, couldn't. Okay, wouldn't, shouldn't, couldn't. That was C for question 9. For question 10. I would have. How would you pronounce that if you contracted would and have? That was A. Would've. Okay, would've. Question 11. Which definition best describes the word can? D. Being able to. The answer to question 12. Which modal verb would you use to recommend something? And that was C. Should. Question 13. Which sentence shows an adverb negating a modal verb? That was B. She may not have seen it. She may not have seen it. Question 14. Which sentence is written in the future perfect tense? D. By the time you get there, the park will have closed. So question 14 you should have had D, and for question 15 you should have had C. Which sentence is written in the present perfect tense? C. We might have been there. And for question 16, I must go there. Which word is the main verb? And that is see, go. Question 17, which sentence shows a modal verb being used as the main verb? That is B, I honestly would. Question 18, which modal verb would you use for shall in the past? The answer there was B, should. So you should have had B. Question 19, which modal verb would you use when offering your assistance? That is A, may. You know, may I help you? May I sit here? And question 20, I must have been working when you called. Name the tense. Well, the tense there was the present perfect continuous. Okay? Have been working. Have been and the present participle. So, this is how your answer sheet should look. I hope that yours corresponds. So you can pause the video here and just double check to see where you went right and where you went wrong. Okay, so there are all the answers there. Ideally you're looking for 15 out of 20. Okay, 15 out of 20, which is 75%. And don't worry if you haven't got it, you just need more practice. And you'll get all that practice by checking out these playlists here and by subscribing. So subscribe today. I'll see you all later on.